Hello, it's Joey, and in today's art journal page I'm using new techniques and fun supplies. Of all the pages I've done so far, this is probably the easiest to do. I'm using metallic paint and mica powder here and sharing lots of tips as we go. I'm using Chartreuse green and gold to create a beautiful doodle mat, and we're drawing dots and lines and circles to make a focal point on the page. So pull up a chair, get comfy, or maybe gather your own supplies. The theme is moving forward, so let's crack on, let's play. And the first thing we're going to do is make a doodle mat, or maybe two. I've been playing with combinations of colours, as you can see here. This one's purple and lilac. This is shot through with grey mica powder, and on this one I used a copper colour. They are metallic acrylic paints, and I'll show you the box that they came from in a minute. On this one I've really got the gloss and sheen coming through. They're so much fun to play with. This is the box they came from. It's quite big and heavy. 36 tubes of metallic acrylic colours. Great shades. You can see some lovely warm deep reds on the left there. I really like the rose pinks on the right. Some beautiful blues, and of course underneath on the left the greens that I adore for all of the journal spreads that we do. And I'm mixing it up today. I'm going to have a play with these mica powders. I introduced them a few videos ago and I've been really looking forward to playing with them. The two shades that I'm using today are copper and light gold, but you can see that in this box of 60 different colours there's just a huge range to choose from. And to do our art journal page today, you don't have to have these mica powders. They're just a little added extra, just something fun that I thought we could play with today. And to make the powders easy to get at and to play with, I've depotted an old eyeshadow palette and just decanted a little spoonful of a few different colours into each of those little gaps. So I'm filling up one with the copper colour there, and the gold as well is one that I'm refilling because that's one I'm finding to be incredibly useful. I use it on black paper. I've done some embossing and then dusting it over to get an effect, and it creates a beautiful sheen but a vintage feel. And you only need the tiniest amount to create a cool effect, as you'll see in just a minute. I have an acrylic block, the sort that you might use for stamping, and a couple of the tubes of acrylic paint. I'm taking the lids off because the paint seems to dry quite quickly, and I also have a clean pot of water. We're just going to use a few dots of that as well. So the first thing I do is just put a small amount from each of the tubes of paint rather randomly onto the acrylic block. Some of them are next to each other and some of them are a little bit separate. And overall my tip would be less is more. I'm adding, a bit like salt and pepper here, a small sprinkling of one of the mica powders and adding a little bit of clean water, just a few drops here and there. Doing that with a paintbrush, and then I'm taking the block and I'm just going to move it left and right a little bit, swirling the water around. And what this does is just move some of that mica powder to make the pattern a little bit more interesting when we come to stamp it. And here we go, it is artistic squidge time. I'm placing it carefully on the paper. It's regular mixed media paper, and gently pressing down and just watching as those paint blobs start to merge. They move the mica a little, probably time for a little bit more pressure there, so just with the hand. And then what I'm going to do is peel it back in a way that gives us some texture when the block leaves the page. So I'm lifting it slowly from one end, and I hope that you can see here some of those little ridges that appear. I think they look a bit like coral. What do you think? The mica has spread and integrated just a little bit into the paint, and we've got a really interesting and cool effect. Shall we have a go at one more? So let's add a little bit more of the paint, and maybe this time we'll add just a little bit less. Sometimes I like to create those doodle mats with spaces between the blobs, and sometimes I fancy a little bit more and they join up. So don't forget to add a few drops of water, that seems to help. Positioning it down maybe trying to get a regular margin somewhat around the doodle mat that you create, and then add a little bit of pressure and let the paint do its magic. And sometimes the mica will merge a little bit more. Obviously every one of these is unique, but I do like the texture that forms when you peel back the perspex, the acrylic. Here, can you see that coral type effect? Something really interesting for us to decorate, and a beautiful sheen. And the water will dry off really quickly, as will the acrylic paint. I've made a few doodle mats in different colours, so here are a few in some shades of purple. I think they work quite well, but I would love to get your suggestions as to different colour combinations that you think will work. Let me know in a comment down below. These two shades are Pearl Royal Purple and Pearl Lilac, and of course I'll leave links to supplies in the description box down below. And one more idea for using our mica powder that I thought would be fun is to drop it onto the acrylic paint just before it's dry. And I've done this a couple of times and got a pretty cool effect. I'm using a brush incredibly gently and also relatively horizontally to just dust the powder left to right over the paint, and perhaps dusting a little bit off. We get a different pattern, of course. We get some movement here left to right, and it just adds something to the dots of mica that we added into the paint before. Here's an example perhaps that's a bit better with a stronger copper colour. And now that we have our doodle mats, it's time to make some marks on the paper. It's a very relaxing part of the process, and really nothing more than wiggly circles, dots and lines. I look at the paper and I just choose a few of those splodges and put a wiggly line around them. So maybe think about them as grouped islands. I'm picking just 2 or 3, spreading it out, not concentrating too much, not thinking too hard about what to do. I think that's all part of the process. Be relaxed and allow yourself to just make a mark wherever you like. I'm adding a little bit of definition to the lower half of some of those wiggly lines, and I think it adds a little bit of a sense of 3D. The inspiration for today's doodle is somewhat from Creation CC, who lots of us love and adore here on YouTube, so I'll link her channel in the description box down below. I've taken some of her thoughts about doodling and just added a little bit of my own interpretation. So using the metallic acrylic paint here I thought would be a lot of fun. I think she uses watercolours a lot as the basis for her doodles, and they're so inspiring. I think many of us know and love her channel, so definitely check her out. I'm creating some movement here with some dots, so I just felt like adding a bit of emphasis to the upper right of that pattern of splodges. Pick whatever your doodle says to you and just add some movement and speak to it. Add some dots, add some lines. Taking a few more dots through some of the gaps between those little islands. So that is more of a straight line of dots. There are no rules, so whatever you want to do. If you love playing with paper and paint like I do, then hit the subscribe button below and the notification bell. I do an art journal page every month, and I also like to bring paint into my junk journal spreads. I find it to be one of the most satisfying and relaxing ways of spending an hour or two. What are your favourite ways of spending time in your craft room? What do you like to create? What's the most fun or rewarding thing for you to spend your time on? Let me know in a comment down below. So I've made good progress with some wiggly circles and dots, and I'm just adding a few little short dashed lines at the bottom of the doodle there, bringing the pattern from right to left. And I'm just checking to see whether I've finished. Have I done enough? Would it be doing too much if I just kept going? Maybe it's good to bridge between the island at the top left and the one on the right with a few extra dots. And I can't resist adding a few more dash lines just in the middle there, but maybe that's enough. Maybe that's where we should finish. It's always easy to do a little bit too much, so step back and look at what you're doing every now and again and just see, have I finished? Is that enough? The theme for today's art journal page is moving forwards, and I'm hoping that you can see the link between that and the freedom and expression that we have in the doodle mat and the patterns that we've created. So there are no rules in what we create today, it's just playing with a few dots and lines. Are you an art doodle fan as well? Do you do it with watercolour or acrylic paint? Let me know in a comment down below, and do you have any channels to recommend, because I'd also love to watch a few more. We're bringing the doodle mat that we've decorated onto the journal page now, and I wanted to add some continuity of colour, so I'm trying to mix up a similar combination of the metallic acrylic paints and create a splodge with the acrylic block. I was just a little bit too careful with the quantity of paint I used on this one, but I did want to share it with you and show you that even when it doesn't go right, we can still keep going. I decided that the issue was not just the quantity of paint, but also how firm the page was behind. So I added a large acrylic block, as you can see there, and that gave me something to press onto, to really press firmly down on and give us a much better artistic splodge. So much more rewarding when it lifts off like that, and I'm quite happy with the distribution of mica and definitely with the sheen that we get from these paints. You can see the similarity there, that I think that will work well together. You can see that I am rounding the corners, empathy to the page there, and I'm going to have it more vertical today and also add some backing papers. So I've chosen some in neutral colours with a bit of script on them, and also some strong black dots. So part of the theme of moving forwards that I wanted to bring out on this page was about being bold. Let's lift our heads and move forwards. Let's move on confidently but very safely in where we are from today. So I'm using bold patterns today in the backing papers, very different from the art journal spread that we did last month that you can see there. That's the dreamy blue delphinium that we painted. It's also very easy, but quite different from the strong black that's pulling through in the papers, and also some of the washi tape that I'm going to be using. I'm adding a border to the left hand page using a gold flecked washi, and also one with small circles. I buy my washi tape mostly from Amazon in bunches of about 20 rolls at a time, which seems to be the most economical way. And on the right hand side here I'm using a very bold black and white stripe, which I can only describe as something like an unfurled licorice allsort, if that makes sense to you. Do those sweets bring back memories from childhood? It felt very much like that, or some kind of stick of rock. What do you think? I've added a slightly whimsical border to the doodle mat itself, dots and dashes, and now I'm starting to think about positioning, which we discussed and played with when I made collage cards a few weeks ago. I'm deciding where I want to position the doodle mat on the page, and I'm positioning the matting paper behind it accordingly, and I want it to overlap the column of dots, the strip of paper that we added behind. So easiest for me, I find, is to build up the layers from front to back and add the glue, and in that way I get them to position exactly where I want them. So this is a June art journal spread. I'm adding a book behind to give me some resistance, something to lean on, and I'm thinking about what to add to the lower right hand page. I wanted to add a pocket because I've got some lovely little pieces of ephemera, some journaling cards, something to add in later. So I'm choosing a pocket. That one seemed to me to be too creamy coloured, and this one is much whiter with a complementary green flash of washi, so I think I like that one. I'll just whiz one up and I'll show you how to make it. It's a sloping pocket with a couple of places to add your tags, your ephemera, anything you want to, and it's really easy to make. I do have videos on making pockets that are incredibly easy, don't require a template, work really well in a junk journal as well, so I will leave a link to that in the description box down below. I've taken a book page and I've folded it in half, and now I'm just folding it lengthwise, giving it a really nice crisp crease. And today's pocket I want to have upright on the front here, so I'll show you how to fold it so that your pocket with the gaps here is upright, the text is upright where you want it. Fold the top left corner in and down, let's make that crease nice and crisp, and also let's have these corners to be right angles here. That's here. Make it at 90 degrees as much as you can, it will help with the finished item. Fold the bottom right corner in, but not as much, so we have a small fold and a big one here. So this is the small one. They're intentionally different sizes, but still both of them have nice, neat rectangular corners, a larger space here of course than here. And all we're going to do now is cut along a crease. I'll just show you that really clearly. I find it easiest to see it here if I turn the page over. And we want to be as close to being on that crease as possible. Tidiness and neatness on this particular pocket does really help. And the magic will unfold as we fold up. We need the glue so that we can stick that last flap down using my trusty Pritt stick, so it's not a very liquid glue, something that won't make the paper buckle, and I can fold the back piece on. I like to have rounded corners on my pages, there's just something nice about that, so at this stage I will just snip a little bit off. And this is what I'm going to put onto that bottom right hand page here. It looks a little bit plain, so I thought I'd bring it together with a piece of washi. It's a lovely way of using washi tape, and it is such an easy way of adding extra strength and also a nice little pattern. Time to add the title, and although these acrylic paints do dry very quickly, I thought it was better to put that piece of paper down. How many times have I created a mess of a splodge or a painting by putting my hand on the paint before it's dried? Is that something you guys do? I do it far too often. I'm adding a border, again replicating the dashes and dots, but longer dashes because I'm on a bigger page. I just feel that that's right and so easy to do and relaxing. And it's time to bring the pocket onto the page. So I've picked this one because the flash of red here in these mix of little wine bottles that are in the picture just seem to work. There's something about a flash of red in any painting that adds just a bit of perspective, a little bit of vibrancy. So I'm sticking that on with a strong glue, and I'm carrying on with the bold black and white theme with these beautiful and cute little vintage images. They're from a digital from Tracy Fox, so again I'll leave a link to her channel in the description box down below. But I'm going for a little bit of a vintage feel. I've backed the digital pictures onto just plain black paper, and I think that works quite well, is quite complementary to the black dots and the strength and boldness and theme of the page. I've splattered diluted paint on this journaling card to create this distressed effect, and this is my journal spread for June. If you've enjoyed this video, then hit the subscribe button below and the notification bell, and check out my playlist of my other art journal pages. I think you might enjoy them. I hope to see you soon.